The night air in New South Wales can feel deceptively warm, almost inviting until you notice the silence between the waves, the way the wind cuts off mid-breath, as if something unseen is listening. Beneath the glow of the harbor lights and the sprawl of coastal towns, there are places here where shadows linger too long, and echoes don't belong to the living. Tonight, we step into streets that seem normal by day, but after dark, they turn into corridors between worlds. Keep your eyes open. In New South Wales, not every light you see is meant to guide you home. 10. Monte Cristo Homestead, Junee. They call it the most haunted house in Australia, and in Junee, everyone knows the legend of Monte Cristo. The two-story Victorian manor stands on a hill, its lacework balcony catching the last rays of sun like a spiderweb catching flies. Inside, time seems unwilling to move forward. The air is cold, not just from the stone walls, but from the weight of what happened here. Built in 1885 by Christopher William Crawley, the homestead was meant to be a symbol of wealth and refinement. Instead, it became a tomb for whispers. Over the decades, its walls have absorbed tragedies. A stable boy burned alive, a maid who fell from the balcony, a mentally ill man kept chained in an outbuilding until his death. Even Mrs. Crawley herself, after her husband's death, became a recluse who never left the house for 23 years, keeping the curtains drawn and the world out. Visitors say the house still hums with grief. Rooms grow colder without reason. Heavy footsteps follow you along the upstairs hallway, even when you're alone. Some hear the rustle of Mrs. Crawley's black dress just behind them, only to turn and find nothing but still air. And in the former nursery, toys are said to move on their own, perhaps stirred by the restless spirit of a child who never made it past infancy. Stand too long in the dining room, and you might feel a hand on your shoulder, warm at first, then icy. It's a reminder this house remembers you. Whether you survive its memories is another matter entirely. 9. Gladesville Mental Hospital, Gladesville, Sydney. The Parramatta River drifts quietly past Gladesville, but on certain nights, the wind seems to carry a low, pained moan from the cliffs above. That's where Gladesville Mental Hospital still sits, a cluster of crumbling buildings and locked wards that once held thousands of souls in silence. Opened in 1838 as the Tarban Creek Lunatic Asylum, it was built with high ideals, fresh air, open space, and humane treatment. But like so many asylums of its era, those ideals rotted in the shadows of overcrowding, neglect, and abuse. Patients, many of them abandoned by their families, spent decades behind locked doors. Some were restrained in darkness for weeks, others subjected to crude medical experiments. When the hospital finally closed in the late 20th century, it left behind more than empty rooms. The unmarked graves of over 1,000 patients lie in the surrounding grounds. No headstones, no names, only numbers carved into the earth. Today, explorers say the hospital feels alive in ways it shouldn't. Cold drafts slide down hallways with no open windows. Doors close quietly behind you, and voices faint, almost conversational, seem to echo from rooms you know are empty. Some have reported seeing pale figures standing at the far end of a ward, only for them to dissolve into the walls. Others claim the smell of disinfectant still lingers in the air, decades after the last patient was moved out. If you walk the riverbank at night, you might catch the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor above you. There's nothing there, but in Gladesville, absence has never meant safety. 8. Pikton Tunnel, Pikton by day. The Red Bank Range Tunnel outside Pikton is a relic of rail history, a damp, brick-lined passage cut through the hillside in 1867. But when night falls, the darkness inside feels thicker than it should, as if it's been sitting there for over a century, waiting. Locals whisper about Emily Ballard, a woman found dead inside the tunnel in 1916. She'd been struck by a train, or so the newspapers said. But no one could explain why she was walking through the tunnel that night, or why her death felt so unfinished. Ever since, visitors claim to see her ghost, a lone woman in white, drifting silently through the tunnel before vanishing into the black. Sometimes she appears only as a faint light in the distance, flickering like a lantern until it rushes toward you and disappears. It's not just Emily, either. Some say they've heard a phantom train thunder past them, the walls trembling, only for the air to fall silent a heartbeat later. Others have felt invisible hands tug at their clothing, urging them deeper inside. Stand in the middle too long, and you might notice your own shadow behaving strangely, stretching toward the far end of the tunnel, even when the light is behind you. And if you hear footsteps pacing just ahead, remember this in Pikton Tunnel: you are never the only one making the journey. 7. Q Station, Manly, Sydney. The view from North Head is stunning, the Pacific stretching endlessly, the lights of Sydney twinkling in the distance. But just beyond the beauty lies the quarantine station, a place built to keep disease from entering Australia, and where thousands never left alive. From the 1830s to the 1980s, ships arriving in Sydney with suspected cases of smallpox, plague, or Spanish flu were forced to stop here. Passengers and crew were taken ashore, separated from their belongings, and placed in isolation. Some stayed for weeks. Others spent their last hours on the rocky headland, buried in the hillside cemetery, without ever stepping foot in the city they'd sailed for. The sandstone buildings still stand empty dormitories, the hospital, the showers where people were scrubbed down with carbolic acid. Visitors say the past is not entirely silent here. In the hospital, shadowy figures have been seen standing by the beds. In the shower block, the hiss of running water sometimes echoes when the pipes are dry. Tour guides tell of a little girl in a dress from the early 1900s who skips between buildings, her footsteps impossibly light, her laughter distant but sharp. Others speak of cold hands that brush your skin in the night air, or a man in a bowler hat who appears on the steps, only to vanish when you blink. Even in daylight, the Q Station feels like a place that remembers every name, every fever, every final breath. And at night, the harbor winds carry those memories right to your ear. 6. Matland Jail, East Maitland. The stone walls of Matland Jail rise like a fortress against the Hunter Valley sky. Built in 1848, it housed some of Australia's most dangerous criminals and some who were simply unlucky. The cells were cold, the punishments harsh, and for many, the only way out was in a coffin. Over its 150 years of operation, the jail saw hangings, riots, and escape attempts that ended in blood. In 1977, an inmate was stabbed to death in the exercise yard, sparking unrest that rattled the entire prison. Guards and prisoners alike spoke of a constant tension in the air, as if violence was never far away. Today, the jail is open for tours, but visitors often leave with more than photographs. In the high-security wing, Footsteps follow you up the iron stairs. Disembodied voices call out names, sometimes your own. Doors slam behind you with a finality that makes your chest tighten. One cell, known for its oppressive atmosphere, is said to host the spirit of an executed man whose final moments were filled with rage. People who step inside often feel an invisible weight pressing down on their shoulders, as though the air itself refuses to let them stand tall. The most unnerving tales come from the guard towers at night. Figures are seen pacing back and forth in the moonlight, keeping watch over a prison that no longer needs guarding. And if you hear the faint jingle of keys behind you, remember here, the dead still keep their shifts. 5. Geneline Caves, Blue Mountains. The Geneline Caves are a natural wonder, twisting limestone passages, underground rivers, and crystal chambers that look like something from another world. But beauty doesn't erase the stories, and in these depths, the dark is more than just an absence of light. Long before European settlers arrived, the Gundungura people spoke of the caves as a sacred place, a site of creation and spiritual significance. Later, miners and explorers ventured inside, only to return pale and shaken, claiming they'd heard voices whispering in the stone, guiding them or warning them from unseen dangers. Tourists today report similar experiences. In the river cave, some hear splashes in the water when nothing is moving. In the Temple of Baal chamber, shadows seem to cling to the walls even under strong light. There are stories of a ghostly woman in 19th century dress, drifting silently through the Lucas Cave, her presence marked only by a sudden drop in temperature. Perhaps most unsettling is the sense of being followed. Guides say they often count their group, only to find one too many figures in the line, until they turn to look, and the extra shape simply isn't there. The caves have stood for millions of years, and whatever watches from the dark has had plenty of time to learn the paths and the people who walk them. 4. The Rocks, Sydney by daylight. The Rocks is a bustling historic district, its cobblestone lanes lined with cafes and boutique shops. But when the tourists leave and the night takes over, the old stones seem to remember every drop of blood spilled here. In the early 19th century, this was Sydney's roughest quarter, a place of sailors, gangs, and condemned convicts. Public hangings drew crowds, and cramped alleys hid crimes that never reached the courts. Disease swept through the area more than once, leaving mass graves beneath buildings that still stand. Locals and tour guides speak of spirits that wander these streets. A woman in a faded gown has been seen pacing the upper balcony of a colonial terrace, her face pale and sorrowful. In certain alleys, footsteps echo just behind you, keeping pace until you stop, and then they stop too. One of the oldest pubs here, the Hero of Waterloo, is infamous for its secret tunnels that once smuggled unwilling sailors to ships. Some say you can still hear their fists pounding from beneath the floor, begging to be freed. And in the back room, glasses sometimes lift and smash to the ground, with no hand to touch them. Stand alone in the rocks after midnight, and you'll feel it, the city's past brushing up against your skin, a history that doesn't want to be forgotten. 3. Wakehurst Parkway, Sydney's northern beaches. At first glance, Wakehurst Parkway is just another stretch of winding road through bushland, but anyone who's driven it at night knows the uneasy silence it carries and the sudden cold breath of something unseen. The most enduring legend here is that of Kelly. the ghost of a young woman who appears in the passenger seat of lone drivers. Sometimes she's quiet, simply staring ahead. Other times, she demands to be taken to a certain location. Those who refuse, or try to speak to her, claim their car suddenly swerves as if someone else is tugging at the wheel. Police officers have admitted they avoid the road after dark, unless necessary. Locals whisper about accidents that happen without cause. No animals, no other cars, just a single vehicle suddenly veering off into the trees. Some drivers report headlights appearing in their rearview mirror, only for the lights to vanish when they pull over to let the car pass. Others say they've seen a woman in white walking along the verge, her figure illuminated for a split second in their beams before dissolving into the night air. The road twists through deep, shadowed bends, and the bush seems to press in closer the further you go. It's the kind of place where, if you feel the need to glance in your rearview mirror, you may regret what you see. 2. Gledwood Homestead, Catherine Field, once a thriving colonial estate. Gledwood Homestead now stands as both a heritage site and a stage for whispers from the past. Built in the early 1800s, it was home to the Chisholm family for generations, witnessing births, deaths, and the long, slow decline of the property's fortunes. Guests and staff have long reported strange happenings here. The drawing room seems to hum with invisible energy, as if conversations from another century are still playing out. Music has been heard drifting from the ballroom when the house is empty, the notes faint but unmistakable. Perhaps the most frequently spotted figure is that of a woman in period dress, believed to be Mrs. Chisholm herself. She is seen most often near the main staircase, her face unreadable, her eyes fixed on something far beyond the present. Children visiting the house sometimes claim to see the lady before anyone mentions her. On certain nights, lights are spotted moving through the vineyards outside, bobbing as though carried by invisible hands. The air in the cellar is unnaturally cold, and some visitors feel their hair being tugged gentle at first, then sharply, as if to warn them away. Gledwood may be beautiful in daylight, but once the sun dips below the horizon, the house seems to inhale, and you can't shake the feeling it's waiting for something or someone. 1. Cockatu Island, Sydney Harbour, rising from the middle of Sydney Harbour. Cockatu Island looks peaceful, ferries docking at its wharf, seagulls circling overhead. But its history is layered in shadows. Over the centuries, it has been a convict prison, a reformatory for girls, and a naval shipyard. Each chapter left scars, and some say the island never stopped holding on to the people who suffered here. In the mid-1800s, convicts were kept in harsh conditions, sleeping in overcrowded barracks carved into the sandstone. Many died from disease, violence, or sheer despair. Later, when the reformatory was established, girls as young as 9 were sent here for correction. Accounts from the time describe cruelty, isolation, and punishments that left lasting marks, both physical and unseen. Today, visitors walking the island's paths sometimes hear the clank of chains on stone steps, or low murmurs drifting from the dark tunnels that run beneath the old workshops. The abandoned buildings echo with phantom footsteps, and lights flicker inside locked rooms. Some campers have woken in the night to find shadowy figures standing just beyond the glow of their tents, watching silently. Others report hearing a young girl's sobs carried on the wind, fading whenever they try to follow the sound. The most unsettling stories come from the solitary cells. Stand inside one too long, and you might feel the air thicken, your breath quickening, your own heartbeat echoing in your ears. When you step out, the harbor will look the same, but you'll leave knowing the island has measured you and decided to let you go. From misty tunnels to wind-battered headlands, New South Wales hides a collection of stories too heavy for daylight. These are places where history doesn't sleep, where footsteps still echo, and voices from the past are never entirely silent. You can visit them, you can take the tours, you can even tell yourself it's all just folklore. But when the lights flicker in the harbor and the air shifts without warning, you might remember these names and realize the dead in New South Wales have no reason to let you walk away untouched. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this chilling journey, don't forget to like, comment with your favorite haunted location, and subscribe for more weekly videos from the shadows.